we're back with a spring edition of This Is It, Straight Talk for the Blaxit Community. I'm your host, Devin Austin, aka the Divine Miss D, and you'll find me here every Saturday afternoon from 12 noon to 1 p.m. right here on Blaxit Radio. Today we have a very special guest for you. Her name is Julia Browne, and she has a tour group called Walking the Spirits Tours, Black Paris and Beyond. Without further ado, let's welcome Julia Browne to the show. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Devin. Thanks for this invitation. And it's nice. It's kind of fun to speak to somebody that's in a warmer part of the world or just living a whole different experience. It's kind of fun.
Right, exactly. Well, we're really happy to have you here today. And I'd like to start out with maybe a little introduction about yourself. You can tell us a little bit about your life and, how you got to where you are, how you started your businesses, what you're interested in, family, whatever. We're just interested in you giving us a little bit of an introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So,
okay. How much time have you got? I'm not that young, so I got lots packed in. But I'd just to start to say, just by qualifying that, I'm a nomad in spirit. So I've always been wanting to move around. Even when I was a child, like 10 years old, 11 years old, I was ready to do like study abroad programs and pack the bag and off we go. So I was always thinking about other places to live and how other people lived. And I used to read books about different places, and that just used to fuel my wanderlust. So not surprising when I got to be that I studied tourism in school. And that my first real job in tourism, my first big major job, I had some nice small ones too, but my first major one was as a flight attendant working for Air Canada. So I got to move around a bit, but Air Canada at the time didn't go to all the glamorous places. I think the most glamorous place I went to was Hawaii, probably, or Morocco. Morocco was exciting. And I realized in Morocco, as I walked around the Kasbah and the districts with the what do they call that type of housing there, the riads, that I really liked old walls and feelings of old places, as long as it doesn't have a spooky feel. But I really liked that as opposed to newer, polished cities where I was living in North America. So that kind of set my taste for the places I thought I would like to live or explore further, and then explore the people and their culture and what is it to live in these places. So that kind of set the tone early for me, like early 20s, traveling with Air Canada, and traveled to a lot of cities in Europe. It wasn't going to India or to Australia or South America then. So my experiences were mostly centered around Canada, United States, and Western Europe. So that's kind of where I've almost sort of stayed focused in my travels since then. I eventually while I was a flight attendant, I had the opportunity to take time off because they were laying off people, and it was a chance to go do something else for a while. And I signed up for a year abroad program in the south of France. And that changed everything for me. I met, not only did I really delve into my fascination for French culture, which I'd always had and been reading books, doing this year abroad program in the south of France, in Aix-en-Provence, that not only fed into that my fascination, because we had to do, of course, courses, and we studied literature and the culture of the place. And so through the literature, I learned. I read some of the classics of the French, that the French knew, like Balzac and Émile Zola. And so you get to know the French culture and what's important to them. But also, while I was there, I met the man that became my husband. And so that's when my family started there. So we eventually moved back, a couple years later, moved back to France, to Paris, and started having our family. And so our family center is back in the south of France, in Aix-en-Provence, where his parents and his family lived, and then where my children spent their summers and it's part of their life and their culture as well. So just that one trip, just that one decision to go
Right.
to that year abroad program just did a 90-degree turn, in your life. You never know.
Changed your whole life.
Changed everything. It
Yeah,
changed
that's
everything. And I'm still living that. I'm still
right.
living with that connection today. So it
Wow.
was, when I got there to Aix-en-Provence,
Mhm.
there's a school for foreign students, part of the University of Aix-Marseille. And when I was in the taxi going from Marseille airport to the town of Aix, the taxi driver said to me, "Oh, it's really hard to find a place to live and it's going to be really difficult." And I'm just looking around and I'm thinking, I've come home. That's what I really literally thought. I've come home. And I got there and I found an apartment within a day. Everything just fell into place. So,
It was
when
just
stuff like
meant to
that
be,
happens,
huh?
you just kind of follow. Yeah, it was
Wow.
just meant to be.
That's
So that's
excellent.
kind of my
And you know
family
what?
center there.
And I really love Paris too. So I got a lot to talk to you about the Paris thing. Oh, but before we go to Paris, you're actually in Montreal right now, right? That's
I'm
like
in
your home.
Montreal, the
Yeah.
Paris of North America, they say.
So what I want to do before we hop off to Paris, because I've never been to Montreal, is talk a little bit about Montreal, what's going on there in your life there. Because I remember when I was talking to you once when I found out you were from Montreal, and you told me that what a great city it was and how diverse it is and all blah, blah, blah. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about Montreal, give our audience a little bit of a feel about Canada, because a lot of US people oftentimes want to escape to Canada. I don't really know whether they still want to escape there, but
Yeah,
and
we're
I know a
jumping
lot of
into
the
here
Canadians want to escape to warmer weather, and a lot of them are down in
in the
Mexico.
winter. In the winter, yeah.
But tell us a little bit about life in Canada, or I guess like more life in Montreal. Like, what's it really like? You told me that it was really diverse. I think they have a lot of music and things going on there too.
They do, but I'll start by sort of prefacing it by saying that I didn't grow up here.
Oh,
I was born in England, and my family immigrated to Canada when I was about 8 years old. And we landed in Ontario. That's where they were going. That's where the rest of the family settled. So I grew up in a German town in Ontario called Kitchener, Ontario, the home
wow,
of the largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich. Anyway, so very
wow.
much the German culture. So I grew up in, of course, the Anglophone society, and it was great that I moved to Toronto. But eventually, I moved to Montreal. I wanted to learn better to improve my French. So I moved here so that I could get a job as a flight attendant, literally. So I lived here for about 5 years, and then I went overseas, and then I came back here again for another 5 years, and then I went
Oh,
somewhere else, back overseas, and now I'm back here again, and I've been here for almost 2 years now.
oh my
So
goodness.
this is my third time here.
Wow.
And the reason I keep coming back to Montreal, because it has, people say it has a flavor much different than the rest of Canada. And it does. The fact that it's a bilingual city, well, technically bilingual, but there's bilingualism in the culture, in the people. Sometimes when we first got here, sometimes you couldn't tell whether the person was born francophone or born anglophone, because the accent was just so pure, and it was something that they learned in school. They went to English and French school, but they learned it on the street too, because whatever neighborhood you lived in. So I was like very impressed with that. But what I was impressed with in Montreal at my first years was how distinct the culture was from the rest of Canada. And it had to be, because it was this enclave, this very kind of a refuge of French speaking people, and this great big sea of English speaking people. And if you step foot out of Quebec, nobody's going to speak to you in French, or there are very few spots. So they developed in Quebec, they've developed their very own culture, their own cinema, their own music, their own arts. And to this day, festivals and the arts is so very strongly supported by the government and by the city and by the province itself. So you find, everybody knows about the Montreal Jazz Festival. It's the biggest and the best. Yes,
Yeah.
Toronto has a big one too, but the Montreal one is like, and it has lots of cinema, movie festivals, film festivals, and the arts in general, visual arts, and people come from all over the world. and people come from all over the world to live here. The student population in the universities is extremely international, like lots of Americans, lots of people from Europe, and there are, I don't know the numbers, but there is a large percentage of people from France living here. So you have all those mixes of cultures, and the Quebec culture is the foundation of it all that they play off of. So you can find all kinds of, if you're into the arts and culture and music and that, even in the dead of winter, they have winter festivals outside, and there's no excuse not to go out. I mean, there's none, because they have these great warming centers. So, you're doing some activities, you're listening to some music, you're dancing, then you get like cold, you just go over to these warming centers, you put your hands in, or it's a whole body thing. They just got it worked out. It's just a science,
Wow.
and it's gorgeous. I love it. I really
Yeah.
do love how they embrace the sense of they can say the joie de vivre. Well, it is. It's lively, and the summer you're out and everybody's picnicking everywhere, and people are everywhere, and in the bars and in the streets and down at the islands, and it's just there's just people are just like enjoying themselves, like really, really enjoying themselves. And yeah, it's a business. It used to be the business center of
Right.
Canada. But Toronto's got that locked down now. But that's okay, because people from Toronto come up to Montreal to have fun, right? It used to be the old kind of nudge thing, But I like living here.
We just went to you just had Canada International Cinema Day or something. It was just like last week or the week before, and we went to a showing of a Canadian, and it came from Montreal. I think it was called Crazy or something like that.
Crazy?
Yeah. We saw that here in Costa Rica.
Oh my goodness. One of my absolute favorite films.
Yeah. They said it was really popular.
It was like, it was number one for the longest time. And also because the filmmaker died at Christmas this year.
Oh, no.
He did what is it? Pretty Little Lies. He's done all kinds of really huge movies. Yeah, he's a well known.
We watched it. It was in French, which I took 3 years of French, but I couldn't get through the French. And then it was subtitled in Spanish, which I took 4 years of Spanish. So I was like looking at the French, looking at the Spanish, and the lady that invited us was the ambassador, Canada's ambassador to Costa Rica, who's the first African American, well, not African American, but the first Black ambassador, I think, to Costa Rica from Canada. I'm going to be interviewing her, but she told me that she didn't have any idea that it was going to be in French when she invited us to come. But we still enjoyed it immensely, and I'm waiting for them to put out the translation, the English translation portion of it, so that we can watch it again, because we got together after and kind of pieced together what we pretty much thought was going on. So it'll be interesting now to see it in English and see which parts we missed, because there were some parts in there that were funny that we sort of didn't actually get, because the joke was in Spanish. And, when you're reading a joke, you're like, what is that?
Yeah, it's long gone by the time.
Yeah, interesting that you say that. And also, because she is the first Black ambassador from Canada to Costa Rica, what is the situation like in Montreal, at least, for like Black people who are living there? Are there racial issues? Are they pretty much accepted? What's that like?
Well, there's different segments of the Black population. I think it's probably about 10% of the population, but it depends where you are, because you may not see them. You may not see that many people. But I see more on the street here in my little neighborhood, my little East End neighborhood, that I often see when I'm in other cities. But again, it depends what neighborhood you're in. So in my neighborhood, it's very French. So most people of people that are Black that I would see will be, of course, Francophone. Right. And a lot of them will be from Haiti, from the population, the largest segment of the population of the Black population here in Quebec is from Haiti, because there's that connection between the two countries, and then between the two, the Quebec and Haiti as a country. And when they had the earthquake, for example, in Haiti those years ago, A lot of people came up to, repatriated with their family to rejoin their family that were here, but also a lot of adoptions and that kind of thing. So there is a long cultural connection between Quebec and Haiti. And it goes further than that, but I don't have all the details of that. But you'll see you'll see more Black people for the further north in the city you go, you'll see more Haitian. For example, the other day, I had to get my car towed, and I was expecting, as usual, an older white French gentleman, and it turned out a young Black fellow. Turned up, and I went, "Oh, hooray!" It was nice to see. It was nice to see somebody. It was nice to see another fast. But while I waited in the gas station, and I was in the north end of the city towards the Jean Talon market, as I waited up there, I sat and I was waiting in a gas station. There were a lot of Black people going back and forth, a lot of Black youth and things like that. So it depends on which part of the city you go in. Right. So that you get a lot of Francophone. But then there's the Anglophone community here that has been here since, I'm going to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but we started with the railroad porters coming from the United States, and Montreal would be the end of the line. And so they worked between Montreal and then back to the United States. And then a community was formed here. And that's in the west end of Paris, west end of Montreal. So that's what the Anglophone community started out there, but that's also where the jazz that Montreal became known for started, and in that area too, right. The west part of Montreal, and it was Anglophone, and it was and is Anglophone. So there's the two solitudes there. So the American origin one, and then those who came from Eastern Canada as well, and then in the north end of the city you get more the Haitians and the French speaking. But then you have a lot of students, a lot of Black students in the universities, of course, from the African countries. So there's a strong African population here as well. But it's kind of spread out. So you don't know when you see a Black person, you're not sure
where they're from.
Where they're gonna be speaking English or French. And so the young tow truck driver, he says, "You have a little bit of an accent. Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from down Toronto way." He says, "Oh, you're Anglophone." I said, "Yeah." And he says, "How do you like Montreal?" And I said, "I really love it." And I said, "What about you? Do you like it?" He said, "I've never lived anywhere else." So there's generations and generations.
Interesting. Because the other thing I had heard about Montreal, which I assume is probably correct in Quebec, is that that French is pretty much what they speak. Mm-hmm. You need to really know how to speak French if you're going to live there, for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. Or no?
Yep. But unless you're in the west end of the city, which is more English speaking, like Westmount and Notre Dame de Grâce and areas like Côte de Neige, that's you can get by in English over there. But in general, you want to have some French,
right?
But also you can do activities and things in English, definitely.
And also what I had heard, which kind of connects to what you were saying about the people, is that I have a really good friend who's here in Costa Rica, and she's from Haiti. And she's always talking about the accent and the way that French is spoken. And I guess the French are pretty particular about the way that French is spoken. But I also have a new friend who's from Mali, who speaks French as well. So she's my interpreter for him. But he was telling us the other day, he was telling us the different ways. He said, like, the French people say, je suis, or whatever. He was like telling us how they can tell that someone's actually French with their French, or from someplace else with their French. And he's from Mali. His French is different from my friend who's from Haiti. But to me, it all sounds the same, but I guess they can tell pretty much where you're from,
quickly,
by the accent.
The accents and the words you use, and this with which you speak as well. Right. Like, I know I'm Anglophone and I speak French, and I hope people understand me. But they know I'm Anglophone. It's like clear as day.
They can tell, huh? After all these years.
Yeah. Really? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm fine with it. Opens a conversation, like that young fellow asking me where I was from. Right. But I joined a group of young, I was the oldest one in the room, of young Black French women they had a meeting in probably around January or something, and they were probably between 25, 35-ish age group, and a number of them were saying that their parents are from Haiti, but they've grown up in Montreal, so they don't know the Haitian patois as solidly as their parents do, as speaking. So sometimes they don't understand, or they can't speak it as fluently as their parents do. So there is that generation thing where your parents are from somewhere else, but you can't exactly speak it the same French as they do, but you speak this French that's on the ground and that you learned in school. So there's that issue too as well.
Well, do you speak German?
9.
Oh.
I studied it a bit in school. I studied it for a year, and I really actually liked the sound of the German language, and I really wanted to learn it, but it was just too complicated. So I just stuck to French.
Okay. Well, now let's hop back to Paris. Let's go back to your life in Paris. And you were in Paris. You met your husband there. You were raising your children there. Mm-hmm. And what did you do for a living when you were there? As a matter of fact.
Oh, okay. Well, when I left Montreal here, I was working in the film industry, film and film production. So I making films and working in promotion. So I continued looking for work in that field while I was there. So I was able to get some jobs in film production and film promotion. A lot of the jobs were contracts. So you were on contract for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. It was all very, nothing very stable. So you're always looking for another job, but then you used your connections from one job to lead you to another job. So I did a few jobs in film production, film and television production. And then I went into somebody offered me something more stable. And since I had my first child, I thought, okay, I need something which, I'm not the kind who's going to look for something stable. I just like to be free and do what comes along. Right. But by the time we had our first child, I thought, okay, I've got to get serious here. So somebody told me about a job in teaching at a state school, and the atmosphere was really great. So I jumped on it, and there were Anglophones from all different parts of they were from South Africa, they were from Scotland and New Zealand, from everywhere. And it was a joy. It was a lot of fun. But you know what, from that job, I learned, because our students were French, and they were French from the administrative world, they were business people. Of all levels. We had the CEOs, we had the secretaries, we had everybody. But you learn about French people when they're trying to learn English. Oh. You learn about their weaknesses, what they're afraid of, but also what's important to them and how they learn at school. How they learn a language, or how they learn how they learn their approach to education. And I could see that from having my own children, that the education, the way of teaching and the way of learning, absorbing information as a big bite, as a gulp, you just take it down, you memorize it, and you put it back out. That was a certain way of learning that I didn't have as a natural go-to. So I learned a lot about French people doing that job, and I did that for 5 years. Wow. And then at the same time, I went back into film production as well, making my own films. But at that same time, I also started studying at the Sorbonne. So my professor turned out to be the man who was the late Michel Fabre. He turned out to be the man who created the Center for African American Studies at the Sorbonne Nouvelle. And he was the expert on African American culture in France. And he had put together a conference with Columbia and Harvard. And they had this conference in 1992 on African Americans in Paris. And so he became my mentor. And I learned everything from him, from this book that he had written, and from him. And just started walking. But I didn't set out to do tours. I set out to do research because I was fascinated I love history. I love doing research, and I love Paris. So, put the three of them together, and I just started doing my own, what I personally liked. And then I started telling people, hey, you know what, on this street, this happened. Or, you know what, because I was, I just like to spread information. I just like to tell about information, right. And communicate information. So people that started saying, oh, hey, can you show us? So I wrote a couple things down on the cue cards, and I said, hey, let's go. So we started walking around the streets with these cue cards. And then and then they said, hey, we've got friends and family coming into town. Can you do it for them too? And I said, okay, sure. So that's how I started doing my tours. And then a woman, I think her name was Pamela Johnson from Essence, came into town. She said, hey, I heard you give these tours. And I said, yeah. So I've got my cue cards out. We walked around the Latin Quarter, around where Richard Wright used to live, and that was just, it was just shortly after the Richard Wright plaque went up outside the building. He used to live on Rue Monsieur de Prince, which is near the Luxembourg Gardens. And so I took her there, and I took all around that neighborhood, and there's so much history there because that was the center where the writers from even starting back in the 20s, but here in the 50s and 60s, where the writers were concentrated, writers, intellectuals concentrated their activity. That's where the literary center of the city was. So I just did them because people asked me, and then I did them on the weekend because I had a full-time job during the week, and it grew organically, but nobody had ever done anything like that before. And so I was the first one to do it, but and then I would say, okay, well, maybe some travel agents would like to, when they send their clients over, maybe they'd like to, find out more, because why wouldn't you want to be in a city like Paris and follow the footsteps of people that, from your own country, from your own culture? Why would you want to know? Because you don't know, right? Because Paris is just like this very frothy French city, but in fact, it's got very deep Black roots,
Yeah.
So
that's how I found you when we were going over there. And
it's been a long time, isn't it?
I know, it was like 2011 or something like that. Yeah, and we went over and I found your tour, and we found it fascinating. I don't know if you knew this, but when we came back from the tour, we decided that we wanted to move to Paris, and we were going to retire in Paris. After we went on that, I was so fascinated with the tour and going around and learning all this history. We decided that we wanted to move there, and I started a blog called I'd Rather Be in Paris. And I was chronicling my 5-year journey to retire in Paris. However,
I remember that.
After a couple of years, I had to drop it because on Social Security, it was going to be pretty difficult to live there. But we really, really, really enjoyed it. We loved the city. And so I thank you for lighting a spark under me for a love of Paris that I had not had. I mean, I had not even been to Paris. People always wanted to go to Paris all the time. And I'm like,
you're just like,
okay, it's Paris. But then we got over there and we just really loved it. So thank you.
There's something in the ground in Paris. There's something in the air. There's something about that city. You can't say exactly what it is.
No, it isn't.
When you get
there,
go
and you just fall in love with it.
You cannot be indifferent to it. Either you love it or you hate it.
Right, exactly.
And I actually I didn't like it when I first started going. It grew on me. Yeah.
Is your tour still?
I was going as a flight attendant first, so we stayed in nice hotels. We actually stayed at the Paris Hilton, right next to the Eiffel Tower, and you'd have your day and a half to do what you wanted. But I found the people unfriendly. And it was because I just didn't know. I didn't know what the culture was like.
And that's the stereotype about the people.
Yeah. But it's changed. It has changed. Yeah. And yes, so like you said that I lit that spark, and I've done that. And when I think about what my life's work is, it is lighting that spark. It is showing people that there is this city where we have history, and that you can you find yourself in it, yes or no, but you can find something here, and just go and explore it, and then it leads to so many different things for so many different people. So I feel honored and to be able to do this job, to do this.
Is the tour still the same? Or have you made any changes in it or anything?
You know what? They are the same, but they change all the time as well. So, I might do a tour for like a university group, and what I tell them is going to be different than if I take a tour for general tourists, or if I give a tour for art, people are interested in the art, or people that are coming from, let's say, from a different country other than United States. The core of it stays the same, but the periphery it changes, and that keeps it interesting for me as a guide,
right?
Because I'm constantly researching. There's always new information to find out, and once you find out, like me, once I learn something new, I want everybody else to know about it too. So
now, when we went, you weren't there, so you weren't our guide. Do you go over and do tours for people sporadically, or you just have people there? Because I don't remember what the reason was, but I know when we went, we had another lady. She was great though. But
It was probably Shola, a musician.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I
what
think
she was. I think she was from another country or something.
Oh, really? Was she small? She was short?
I just remember she had something on her head, like a scarf or something.
Oh, okay. Well, when I came back to Canada in 2001, then I had to, of course, find other people to do the tours for me. So there was a period where I used several different guides, but training and that it takes a little while, and everybody puts their own personality into it. But yes, I do. People do ask me to come and do the tour specifically for them.
Right.
So I will go, or I'm there because I've helped put the program together, like I've been doing in the last 2 or 3 years, well, since 2018, working with a company that specializes in alumni tours. So we put together a tour specifically on Black Paris. And so I go over and I do those tours for them and run the program, and with me and our great tour directors. So yes, I do go upon request, but I have guides that live there.
Do your kids
run them year round?
Do your children live in Paris? They're grown, I would imagine.
Yeah, my eldest is 30 and she lives in Spain. She lives in Palma and Mallorca. And my eldest lives my youngest one, she's 25. She lives right here in Montreal, which is one of the reasons I'm back in Montreal.
Okay. Well, why did you leave Paris, by the way?
Get out your handkerchief. That's what I do whenever I think about it.
Oh no.
It was just one of those things. It was just, I was playing. It was really dumb, actually. It was unintentional. We came over as a family on vacation in the month of August, and we were going to stay for a couple of weeks with my parents. And that was in 2001, August 2001. And then we got to the airport to return, and they said, "Oh, listen, the flight's been oversold. Would you like to give up your seat? We'll pay you for it." We said, "Okay." That gives us another couple of days. So they said, which date would you like? So this is 2001. Would you like September 10th or September 11th? Oh no. So you know what date we picked. Oh yeah. The furthest one is September 11th. So getting ready to go back to the airport, everything, the whole world fell in, there was the 9/11 happened, right? Oh. And so since then, I just stayed. We signed up. I signed up the kids for school, and I just stayed. And it was, and I was also going to school at the time. I started going to school, back to school for broadcasting. So I wanted to finish that as well. So it was just like one of those moments in history where you step into the pothole. But it's been an interesting experience. Well,
when you were living in Paris, because as I mentioned, one of the reasons why we weren't able to stay there is because of the cost of living. But what do you think about the cost of living there and the possibility for expats? Because a lot of people are now wanting to, Black people are spreading out all over the globe. And I don't really know how many of them actually think of going to Paris, because I always think of it as being a rather expensive place to live. Do you think?
It's one of the most expensive in Europe, one of the most expensive in the world to live in. After London, it's probably the most expensive on the continent. So if as a person coming from, people who are going there are people that are, expats, but yes, because they want to like nomad work elsewhere, digital nomads. But there's also people that simply want to get out of the United States, for example, or people that want to get out of North America. So, I see there's this, a Facebook page called Americans in Paris, Americans in France, and there is just a constant stream of people coming, wanting to come, but the rules have changed. It's got more difficult. It's not as easy as it used to be. Before you show up and you get your visa, and you'd stay the amount of time, and then you go back, and then you have to apply for your visa to come back. But now you really have to prove that you have enough money to stay. Right. Like you have to show a paper. You got to show your business plan. You have to show your bank account. And you got to show that you have enough money to stay, that you're not going to be a burden on the French.
Right. I thought it was pretty hard when we were even looking into it in 2011. It didn't seem like the process for getting to stay there was very easy. You know what? You got to. I feel like there's a kind of feeling like you have to deserve to live in Paris. Yeah, or to live in France.
But but to that point, there are things that are changed, because yes, there's a lot of retired people or people who plan to retire in France, but there's of course the new business people. But France wasn't typically a place for, if you were a business person or want to be an entrepreneur, that wasn't a place where you were going to flourish, which is one of the reasons why many young French entrepreneurial spirited people moved out to United States or to Britain or to elsewhere, because it was far easier to do it there. But certainly in the last 10 years, we've seen that the state has put into place things to become an entrepreneur, but it's still not that easy. But it means that, like, also when you're applying for a visa on that you can that there is now a category for like a solo entrepreneur.
Oh,
that kind of.
That's good.
That's something that I hadn't seen before, but I know it's there now. But you still have to show, that you can afford it, and show what your business plan is, what you plan to do, and all that. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your other projects. Some of your other projects. I know the film industry is very important to you, and you have some some projects out on that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. The longest one I've been involved in while living in Paris is my collaboration with a company called Blue Lion Films, Joanne and David Burke. They're documentary filmmakers in Paris since the 80s, but they were in the film and television industry before coming to Paris. Anyway, we came together because they wanted to do a film on African Americans in Paris and the history and the people. And they came across me as a guide, and I started working with them. So I'm the associate producer with them. So together we put together, I've worked with them and put together the film Paris Noir, African Americans in the City of Light, that came out in 2016. There was a series of short films that focus on individual persons like Josephine Baker, like Sidney Bechet, the musician, like the women artists, like Lieutenant James Reese Europe, the military lieutenant general who brought introduced jazz to Europe with his band. So there's separate pieces like that for the educational field, but then there's a new one that came out last year, the end of last year, called Fighting for Respect, and it focuses on the African American soldier experience in World War I and how they were trained in the U.S., what they expected when they got to France, how that was so much different, how they're able to distinguish themselves, whether they were as laborers or whether they were on the field as soldiers. And then what happened when they went back to the United States in 1919, expecting to be rewarded or respected at least for their military service overseas, fighting for democracy, and it did not happen. Right. It was just the worst crime ever. It was a crime. Well, it was a crime the way they were treated. There was that Red Summer of 1919 when so many people were the cities were burnt and people were killed in their uniform, that kind of thing. So that's what that last film is about. It's called Fighting for Respect. So I work closely with them on the filmmakers on these documentaries. And we show them so many places, especially Paris Noir that came out in 2016. It's been shown at that beautiful Museum for African American Study, History and Culture in Washington, D.C. We've shown it at the French Embassy in D.C. We've shown it all around the United States, and I'm the one that often accompanies it. And a couple of places in Canada we've shown it. It's also translated into French, dubbed into French. So we've shown it all through, in France quite a bit, in England. And so our last film, Fighting for Respect, is now also available in French. And it's a particular interest to France because it talks specifically about the French World War I experience, and in places in the northern France, the battlefields that are still existing, that are still almost like holy places for French experience in French history and French culture.
Wow, how exciting. Are you working on anything, any new films or projects that you are going to be having coming out in the future right now, or no?
Not a film project, but during the pandemic, I started doing short films on virtual tours of Paris. But they were short films that mixed the everyday Paris with the history, and I did those for private individuals, and but also for schools as well. And they were short, they're 5, 6, up to 10 minutes long. So we did a series of those, but also did one for recently this year for Sigma Delta Theta sorority as a fundraising. So we do them for different purposes, and they come out. That one was like 25 minutes, and it was just a beautiful trip back in the history of African Americans in France itself, and Paris. So what I try to do is to give people a visual document that connects them to Paris and connects them to the history. Right. So whether you're African American or not, if France is of interest to you, if Paris is of interest to you, this is a piece that you're going to not only learn from, but it's visually very attractive. It's right. Well, we spend a lot of time on the visuals. So
right, exactly. Wow.
And the information, of course.
Well, that is really interesting. Now, also, is there anything else any other projects or anything that you want?
Well, we're spreading out. We're spreading out to, there's, as you mentioned, there are people of color moving all over the world, like spreading out from if the home base is United States, but just finding expat life or choosing to live a life in a different environment.
Right.
Choosing how you relate to people around you, how they relate to you. And
changes.
It's a question of choice. It's a question of choice at the moment. So, so from that, we know that there's more and more knowledge about the Black history in other places, like in Spain and in Portugal and Morocco, in Germany, so in England, of course, in the UK. So we're spreading out to offer, to partner with people on the ground, but to offer itineraries and tours there. So because we do customized itineraries. Besides the tours, we customize trips for people from A to Z. They might be going for a week. They might be going for, one of my clients is there for 3 months. So we customize their trips for them. And so just to get people to taste the country they're in, to learn the country they're in, but also to dive into and feel part of the Black history or the heritage that's there.
Oh, that's exciting. That's great. Well, since we're on the subject, then can you give us, for our radio audience, can you tell us how we can get in touch with you for your different avenues of projects and tours and whatever? Give us the links on, say them for the radio audience, and then for our YouTube audience, I will put the links in the description box where we can reach you and get a hold of all of your resources and all of the wonderful information and films that you have.
All right. The main website, which is it's being renewed. It's renovated. It's the company's name is Walking the Spirit Tours, but the website is www.walkthespirit.com. So people can go to that website. They can contact us at info@walkthespirit.com.
Okay.
And then the videos that we've done are more private projects for people. So those aren't really available to view, but you can see some of the other things that we've done on our YouTube channel, which is Connect to Black Heritage. And I don't know what you are off the top of my head. I don't know what the URL is, but it's Connect to Black Heritage. Julia Browne.
What about Facebook? Anything on Facebook?
Facebook. Yeah, we have a Facebook page. My personal page, but also Walk the Spirit Tours. So it's WTS Walk the Spirit Tours. That would be our Facebook page.
Okay, and also I understand that you're going to send me some music that I can share with our audience here, and I will. If they want to stick around after our interview, I will play some of the music here, and I will also add that music to the playlist for Jazz and Java Music Around the World, which plays right after This Is It at from 1 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Blaxit Radio. And any idea what kind of music you're going to be sending to me, or should I just let it be a surprise?
Well, I like, you know what, I'd like to support the people that I work with in Paris, or that I know in Paris. You know, it's a small community, but it's a big city, small community.
Right.
One of the musicians his name is Darryl Hall. He plays the bass, and he's got a lot of music out, but he also has a record that he did with another performer in Paris. Her name is Ursuline Kersen. She's been there for probably 30 years by now. She comes from Broadway, Bubbling Brown Sugar. And so they put together some music. So I'll send you something of theirs. But also there's another bassist that I work with who does some of the jazz walking tours with me. And his name is Farris Smith Jr.
Oh, cool.
And you may have seen, you know, sometimes when you see pictures of jazz musicians in Paris, and you look for if you look for Black ones, you'll see a man on one of the bridges of Paris with this big bass, and he's just like laughing. And so that's Farris Smith Jr. So I will send you some of his as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I would love that. Well, in closing, are there any words of wisdom or advice that you would like to share with our audience before you leave?
I would say if you're now that COVID is sort of reduced, it's changed our life forever, but it has, I think, renewed people's sense of wanting to travel and get out there. I would say, you know, even if you're a solo traveler, get out there. Just go. You don't have to go far, but think about when you're traveling what the Black connection might be to where you're going. And it's more and more people in the tour industry, because it's a business I'm in, tourism industry, are putting together tours all across the United States, in Canada, and elsewhere as well. So just look and see wherever you're going, what the Black connection might be. And because it's nice to plug in, it's nice to know where to deepen our footsteps as we travel around the world.
Right. Well, thank you.
And travel with intention, you know, travel to learn, travel to communicate, travel to share with people as you travel.
Right. Well, that's excellent advice, and to pass along to our audience. And I really want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm really happy to meet you, because after all these years, I mean, it's been a while, right?
It's true. It's been a minute. Yeah. Thanks, Devin, and thank you also for inviting me. And you know, great thing about social media, you know, probably the biggest cultural change in the last 20 years is social media, 10 years. Right. Just the fact that we can keep track of people and see what
I know, and still find them, right? After all these years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and have our audience stay tuned after the show to hear some great music that's been referred to us by our friend here, Julia Browne. And other than that, I just wish you much luck and success, and have a great rest of the day.
And I'll say bonne journée to everybody. Have a nice day.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thanks, Julia.